Okay, and we're back with The Art of Dreaming with your host, Michael Hemmingson, here at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And my guest today is Anya Briggs. Are you still there? You're with us still, Anya, right?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So why don't we get into your experiences with MK Ultra and the Alphabet agencies and being a milab and your interactions with super soldiers Aaron McCullum and James Casbolt.
Sure. Yeah,
so
this is chapter 2. This is the dark part. But you know what? Look, do I sound like a basket case? I mean, I could sound completely psychotic saying what I'm saying. These are psychotic things potentially that I'm describing, but ultimately, I want people to understand this is about self-empowerment. What I talk about, it's not about disempowerment. It's not about fear. Information cannot inherently harm you. It's like a knife. You can either use it to, create something beautiful or destroy something. It's a challenge to every single individual listening to this within your ear range, within the sound of my voice, rather, to take personal responsibility for this information. It's not up to me to decide for you what you do with it. It is your choice. If you don't like it, you can turn it off. That's your choice. But if you choose to listen and you remain silent about it, or you remain, what's the word I want to use? You choose to remain silent, essentially, about it. You are participating in this activity implicitly. What you're doing is you're essentially, I know this sounds heavy-handed, but it's like the equivalent of like watching a child being like torn apart by wolves and you just stand there and not do anything about it. That's the milab phenomenon. And, we no longer have the excuse of, well, it's been kept, deep undercover because this, the internet didn't exist, so therefore we didn't know about it. That's kind of the attitude, okay, so now we have the internet and there's information online, and then people sort of have a cognitive dissonance about it where they say, well, how do I know this is real? There isn't definitive proof that this is real, except that there's lots of people coming forward talking about it. And then the cognitive dissonance goes up another level where you sort of abandon your personal responsibility of the situation, where you say, well, how do I know those people are telling the truth or not? Well, it's your personal responsibility, if you're still listening to the words that I'm saying, to look into it yourself. And this is the challenge to humanity. This files under personal responsibility for your thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. And emotions as well. You have to take responsibility for your emotional life as well. And for me, it was a kind of living death to remain silent about this. And believe me, I had lots of hippy-dippy granola-y type friends who are really cults. They became really big cults of personality, and I'm no longer friends with them now because they became insufferable. Or they were crass sort of opportunists who sort of tried to exploit my abilities to further their career. And I had to, I even mentioned some of them in some of my early videos from a couple of years ago, and I actually had to take a couple down because I couldn't stomach, promoting them inadvertently anymore because they didn't want me to talk about this. They said, just stop, move away from it, don't acknowledge it, it doesn't exist. They didn't say it doesn't exist, but actually I had a direct quote from this very cult of personality woman who, wants to help all the poor indigenous people of the world, but she treats her friends like servants. I had her literally tell me, what does this have to do with unity, Anya? When I told her, crying and emotional and upset, that I was a milab. What does this have to do with unity? This has everything to do with unity. This has to do with the continuation of the human race. This has to do with whether or not we're slaves or we're free. And the macro is the micro and vice versa. We can't just act like we're in this little bubble and nothing else exists. Thoughts create reality. So that's the concurrent theme that I have with all this stuff. And so if I say stuff that sounds really dark and scary, information cannot inherently harm you in and of itself. It's what you choose to do with it. So without any further ado, I can tell you whatever you want, within reason, if you want to ask me about it. But I just felt I had to make that preamble because people just hear this stuff and they react. They have like a knee-jerk reaction where they just have fear. This person's fear-mongering. No, that's not my point. My point is we have this golden opportunity right now at this stage in humanity to come together and, just say no to fascism. Get over it. Get over ourselves. Really become truly the magnificent beings that's our birthright.
So anyone out there who doesn't know what the term milab is, it's military abduction. It's people who have had experiences being abducted by the military, sometimes with alien interaction, or the alien. They might think it was an alien abduction as a screen memory, but it was really our good old Black Ops military. So Anya, when did you first start remembering or realizing that you were a milab?
I had suspected that I was a military abductee for about a year. I think I got military abducted in 2007, right before I had the experience with Roan in the coffee shop. Mm-hmm. Not long before that happened. That was about December 19th, 2007, and this would have been around right before Thanksgiving, about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving in 2007. So November 2007. I remember going to a bar after work with a blonde woman who I worked with, except I can't remember who this woman is. I can't remember her name. I just remember she had blonde hair and she was about 5'4", and she was wearing a black, like a suit, like a dress suit, black jacket, black skirt, white shirt, I guess. And I cannot for the life of me remember who this woman is, which is weird because I just remember her as a friend who I went to get drinks with after work. And I remember having 2 beers with this woman. And I remember going home in a cab, and the cab is driving along the FDR Expressway, and it's really beautiful because I love the FDR Expressway. It's just like this really cool part of New York if you're in a cab driving home. And I don't remember getting home at all, but I remember waking up face down diagonally in my clothes from the night before on my bed, and all the sheets and blankets are on the floor, and I have this unbearable thirst, like a thirst you can't even imagine. Like I haven't had water for days, and I'm so thirsty, and I'm so groggy. I don't know what day of the week it is. I don't know where I am. I guess it was a Friday night when this happened, and then I wake up and it's the weekend. But my hair is still up, my makeup's still on, everything. It's just like, and I'm thinking, wow, I only had 2 drinks and I got this hungover. And of course I wasn't hungover. And then I look at the fitted sheet that's still on the bed, and on the top right-hand corner are 3 long black claw marks running right down, straight down, vertically on the fitted sheet. And that really flipped me out. I was like, what is that? And I swear to God, this is how doped up I was, or groggy. I remember thinking, is that my mascara? Is that my makeup? Was I wearing that much makeup? And these were like charcoal black, long claw marks along the vertical part of the fitted sheet of the bed. And I wasn't horrified because I was so groggy and hungover or whatever it was that had been done to me. I now know I was probably drugged. I didn't think to be scared. I was just like dumbfounded. And I remember pulling the fitted sheet off as soon as I could get on my feet and walk, and just like kind of stupidly like pulling it off the bed, like, whoa, that's got to go in the laundry. And then I remember then thinking, no, maybe I should just save it. I should just hold on to it. I shouldn't wash it. It's proof. It's proof. And I didn't know of what at that time, but I think subconsciously I knew. And then the sheet disappeared. It's not anywhere. I can't find it anywhere. And that is when I started suspecting that I had been military abducted. for the first time. So that would have been November of 2007. So I had this lingering feeling for a couple of years before I actually definitively got it confirmed that Aaron McCullum did in fact abduct me.
Mm-hmm.
And
for anyone who doesn't know, Aaron McCullum, there's a number of interviews with him online and with Carrie Cassidy's Project Camelot. He's a MK Ultra super soldier who has admitted that he used to abduct people while in the service of the military alongside aliens. Okay,
yes.
So Aaron admitted that he had abducted you.
Yeah, and he admits it on tape. If you go to my there's a May 2010 interview that he did with Jeremiah Duncan when he used to have Project Information Generation Radio, and it's saved in an archive on my blog. And it's labeled, I think it just says something like interview with me and Aaron McCullum from May 2010. And there's a warning that says if you're a MyLab, I strongly caution, if you get easily triggered, maybe you shouldn't listen to this, because he talks about the methods that they use to abduct people. And he talks about literally like going into a coffee shop and putting a drug in somebody's drink and just walking out of the store with them, and the person's so drugged up they'll just do whatever he says, and they don't even know that they're drugged up. So, and they have no memory of it later. So it's just very unnerving, the interview. It was a very hard interview and he suggested that I call in. And, so I did. And so somehow when I met him in April of 2010 at the request of a friend, she suggested that I speak with him, because I started telling her, I think I'm a MyLab. I think I'm a MyLab. I'm just having all these weird feelings. I see these videos about it, and I just have this sinking feeling that something happened to me on at least one occasion. And she just intuitively was just like, you should speak with Aaron McCullum. And so she knew him, and I sent him an email. Oh, and what had happened was I wanted to research him a little bit because I hadn't seen his interview on Project Camelot yet. So I watched his interview, but it took me like a week because it was so hard. For some reason, I could only watch about 10 minutes at a time, and I would get this really numb sensation in my head, and I'd start feeling really fuzzy. My head would just feel really fuzzy, and I couldn't focus, and I would get distracted, and I would have to go do something else, which I now realize was my programming, most definitely. I mean, it was so hard for me to watch his interview. And so I remember thinking about, finally finishing the interview after about a week. It took about a week's time to finish the interview. And I kid you not, 45 minutes after I finished the interview, he requested me as a friend on Facebook. And so I emailed him immediately and I said, oh my God, I just finished watching your video. And I said, have you contacted our mutual friend? And he said, no, I haven't spoken to her in a while. He just sort of did it on autopilot. He wasn't even fully aware. He said in the interview, the May 2010 interview, he said, I don't know, sometimes I just go on autopilot and I just do things and I don't know why I do them. So he obviously subconsciously, I'm sure he was picking up on something with my picture or my name or something. And then it was like everything unraveled. I saw him in a Skype session and I started sobbing like a baby immediately, and I just started saying over and over and over again, I recognize you, I recognize you, I recognize you. And he got kind of choked up a little bit and he said, that's a common reaction to people I've abducted who meet me. And then he said he's abducted something like 200 people at least, something like that, when he was doing MyLabs. So, and then he introduced me to a woman who shall remain nameless, who chooses not to go public at this time, but she's a very dear friend of mine. And I Skype sessioned with her, and I suddenly got flooded with recovered memories of being with her in, horrific settings, trauma-based mind control settings with, sexual humiliation and abuse you can't even imagine, just really, really horrifying settings. And we're both drugged up out of our minds. And then we're also in a time travel experiment that involves the Truman administration. And then I'm in Russia in 1947. And it's for all I know, these could be just computer programs that are, placed in my head somehow with some kind of microchip. And I'm just under the impression that this is happening to me. But either way, this is some kind of manipulation that's being done to me with exotic technology and it's very pointed and it's very specific. So whether or not the stuff happened to me, it's almost like it's beside the point. It's like, why is it happening?
Okay.
You want to get that?
Oh, no, just let it go. Keep on. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Okay.
So, and then the memories just wouldn't stop. It was really awful for a period of time. It was really, really awful, and it was really traumatic, but I think it was necessary because the way I understand it is with trauma recovery, the way you get out of it is kind of the way you got into it. You kind of have to go through it in reverse, in my experience. And you can't, it's almost like a form of desensitization therapy, like with people with phobias. And you have to kind of look the demon in the eye and just stare him down until it doesn't intimidate you anymore and it doesn't program you anymore and you don't get triggered anymore. Obviously, that's a vast oversimplification for what I'm talking about. It didn't even occur to me that there was mind control involved until I started researching Kathy O'Brien's story and Monarch mind control programming. And I started looking into Fritz Springmeier's work, although I could not, literally, I tried to read Fritz Springmeier's his free online ebook, How to Detect a Undetectable, mind-controlled slave, something. It's a really famous book. Alex Jones sells it on his website now. And I literally got to maybe page 6, and I had to just stop reading immediately because I couldn't take it. Just with the preamble that he was talking about, I knew that something had been done to me because I was reacting. I was having a physical, like my stomach would clench up and my whole body would tense up about certain things. And then it started like I would research about Monarch mind control and I would just feel sick to my stomach and I would get really numb and I would get tunnel vision. I would feel like I was falling down a deep hole and I would suddenly realize like I recognized that. I recognized that experience. I recognized that. And then I don't remember when I saw James Casbolt's interview. I might have seen it during that 9-month period of time between 2007 and 2008 when I was like the Close Encounter guy, Richard Dreyfuss, with the mountain of mashed potatoes on the table. But I remember being completely haunted by his first Bases interview from 2006. And just being like, there's something about that guy. I think I recognize him. Why would I know him? He's this English guy in MI6. Why would I know this guy in England? And then I started seeing, in addition to, I found Miles Johnston's Underground UK interviews, and those flipped me out. Because not only was it just James Casbolt who started resonating with me, it was a bunch of people he interviewed. And I was like, it was getting to the point where it was ridiculous. And when he was talking about Barry King at Peasmore, and there was something about the word Peasmore that really freaked me out. And then I started finding out about deep underground military bases, and I started researching that, and I was like, there's some resonance here. It was a dark resonance frequency, for lack of a better term. It was really profound. And then I started receiving messages from Space Command.
Oh, yes. Barclay, right?
Yeah, nice segue. And so through all this trauma, I'm like this fragile little open wound at this point because I'm starting to think this is more than just a coincidence, but all of these people's stories are making sense to me, and it's not. It suddenly dawned on me it wasn't all about love and light. It wasn't all about the Pleiadians saying we love you over and over again. That it dawned on me that there was a burden of responsibility that the benevolent faction of whoever this was that came into my room and said, we're here to give you your birthright of your memories back. It dawned on me that there was an overarching purpose for this, and that it involved the dark side of, understanding the darkness that had happened to me as well. And it was very much a situation not of my choosing in the 3D sense of the word. I didn't seek that out. That sure as hell was something I didn't seek out. But then I started connecting the dots with that, and I contacted James, and At first it was really contentious because I started getting astral visits from him with a reptilian. And it was really bad. And then that could have been holographic technology. I still don't know to this day. Or it could have been him and his little reptilian friend. I don't know. But there was
Peter. Oops.
What?
I was going to say Peter Petrov, who was on the show before this. He's always going blah 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 reptilians.
It kind of is like that. I mean, it kind of becomes like this running joke. And then the reptilians showed up.
Right.
But, it's true. Like, there's a heavy reptilian element to this. And they do like to possess humans. And in fact, this kind of correlates with what Alex Collier was talking about recently in his March interview, where people start getting possessed by reptiles, or they start getting out. And then I started realizing that there was an occult aspect to this as well, that the occult played a heavy role in that. And I started, at that point, it was around 2010, around September 2010, James had posted a list of names, a short list of names on his then Facebook page. He's not on Facebook anymore, but at the time he was on. And there were 7 names on the list, including me, him. He just, it was a very quick little note. He just said the following people have been in black operations with me. And it was him, Aaron, me, and several other people who I don't think I should name them, but it resonated with me. And
Anya?
Yeah?
So someone in the chat room says, ask her about the details of her 1947 Russian experience.
Oh, that. Okay. Well, like I said, I don't know if this is a computer program designed, it's sort of like a training exercise or what, but it was a memory of me as a courier. And in my research, there was a woman named Candy Jones, who was one of the first undetectable secret agent, whatever you want to call it, couriers, who was a fashion model in the 1940s who had been abused in these programs, and her personality had been fractured and split. And she was sending I think it was like coded messages between parties or something, and she had no memory of this. And I was sort of fulfilling that kind of Candy Jones role. And my friend, who shall remain nameless, who's in the programs with me with the time travel stuff, she also was a courier. And I mean, we were, in these memories as well, we were trained in tactical gear. I mean, I've had 3 or 4 other, independently, I've had 3 or 4 other people in the programs tell me in emails or straight to my face, I remember you could handle yourself pretty well, and you knew how to use an AK-47. You were pretty good with an AK-47. And like in this lifetime, I'm like terrified of guns. I don't want to touch a gun. I'm like really scared of guns. I don't like guns. I totally believe in the right to bear arms, but guns freak me out. And when you get, one person saying that is unnerving enough, but 3 or 4 people, I think it was 4 people independently said this to me. You reach a point where you're just kind of, you have to throw your hands up and be like, this can't be the largest practical joke. Am I being punked? Is this like the biggest practical joke played on a human being in the history of the world or what? I mean, after a while, you just have to pay attention to these quote unquote coincidences and take them seriously at a certain point. It's just kind of like the universe's way of saying, pay attention. So, beyond that, okay, there's something weird to that memory as well in 1947, and this is why I'm thinking, take this with a lump of rock salt, but this memory I'm recovering is in Moscow. I'm dressed in the clothing of the time, and I go to this very upscale townhouse in a public square in Moscow, and for some unknown reason, a man who bears a very striking resemblance to Robert McNamara, the former Secretary of Defense for the Nixon administration, who was basically responsible for all the tactical maneuvers in, Vietnam or something like that. But he would have been the head of Ford Motors at that time, I believe. Because I looked it up on Wikipedia. I was like, why is young Robert McNamara answering the door? And I hand him a package, and unfortunately he says, oh, you're very pretty. And then he makes me service him. I have sex with him.
Right.
And I leave. And I don't remember anything else. That's the only thing I remember about the memory. Now, is that a screen memory? Was it an alternate universe? Was it what? But beats the hell out of me. I have no idea. And the reality was like a punch in the stomach. I mean, when I remembered this, it was like I saw it on a screen in a movie, but I'm in my body, and I'm in Moscow, and I can smell the air. It's the fall. I'm wearing this nice 1940s tweed suit. My hair and makeup are done in the style of the time. And I'm carrying, I kid you not, like in a film noir movie, a brown paper package. And I knock on the door, and he answers, and he's like, surprised. He's like taken aback. I guess he thought, it was somebody else or something. And I hand him the package. He puts it, and he leads me into this room that's like it's like a library by the entrance, and there's a piano, a black piano, like a Steinway piano, in the room. And he puts the package on the piano, and then he's like, oh, you're very pretty. And then, the rest is history, I guess.
Now, were you speaking Russian with him, or was it English?
No, but I have one creepy thing that happened to me once is I woke up, and as I was waking up, I was speaking what I believe was Russian. I don't speak Russian. I know my name is I'm Lithuanian, Jewish, English, Welsh, German, Swiss, Danish. I'm a bunch of things, but.
And what about are you part reptilian?
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
Most humans are.
Right.
Humans have the reptilian brain. That's what the limbic nerve, not the limbic, they call it the reptilian brain. There's a part of the human body that is part of that. Most people are a bunch of things. If most people knew what their true genetic lineage was, they wouldn't be so obsessed with the reptilian agenda, because they would realize they'd met the enemy and the enemy was them. It's just, again, it goes back to that theory of a knife can cut up your food for you, or you can kill somebody with it. It's what you do with it. Because, again, to dismiss this myth that all reptilians are bad and evil, I had a reptilian fix a slipped disc I had in my back. I was getting ready to go to a chiropractor, and my guide, Aya, said, Anya, you have to get out of duality construct, because I've been reading way too much David Icke about the reptilian agenda, and I was terrified. I didn't know at that point that I was, like, part reptilian myself, probably. And I was so scared of it. I was terrified. I just had this abject terror, And she was like, nope, you're going to meet one, and he's a healer, and he's going to fix your back. And he's going to meet you tonight. And I started crying immediately, and I started begging her, no, anything but that. They're so awful. They're evil, blah, blah, blah. And he appeared right on time, just like she said he would. And he said, I'm only here to fix your back, telepathically, of course. My name is Kata, and I saw in my mind the spelling of it. It was K''Taah. And I'm only here to serve your best, highest interest, or something to that effect. Like, I love you. I would never harm you. Please let me help you, and I will leave. That's all I want to do. And he said he was a member of a group of reformed reptiles they called themselves the Reptilian Army of Light, and they were healers. They were medical healers. And in fact, there's a misconception about the snakes that are going around the symbol for medicine. I don't know what that's called, but that's a stand-in for the DNA strand, is what that is. But that it's also a reference to the faction of reptilians who are healers who do that. That doesn't get a lot of press. But anyway,
Hey, something weird just happened. I'm standing by a window here. I'm in Sedona right now, and as you were talking, this black round kind of medicine ball thing was floating in the sky and stopped and was looking at
the sky.
Is that one of your friends?
Oh, say hi. Yeah, that's them. They're benevolent. Yeah, that's the thing.
Well, I'm in Sedona, so kind of things just fly around here.
No, Michael, that's a drone.
Yeah, I know, it's a drone.
They observe and report. That's all they do. But that's just that's me. You are in Sedona. That's typical Sedona.
Yeah, I mean, there's things all over Sedona. I mean, Bell Rock is a vortex straight to the Pleiadian system.
forget about it. I got this pull to go to Sedona a few years ago. I was just like, must go to Sedona. But I'm really glad I didn't, because the vibrational frequency of the field of that place is so high, I'd probably go crazy. It's just like, it's just like all the time, like at this high rate. And sometimes you just want to chill out and lay back and eat potato chips, you know? You don't want to be at like that super special level of highness all the time. It's kind of, I suppose I would adjust the frequency, but it's just like too much. I was just in New Mexico shooting for Jesse Ventura's show, and it was the same way. It was like, all the time. It was crazy.
So everyone out there will know how calmly I take a UFO observation.
Yeah, they aren't going to harm you. He's looking at you, by the way. He's taking
pictures. Yeah. Now if a reptilian,
and say Anya says hi too.
If a reptilian knocks on my door, I'll take it calmly.
No, they're nice. They're nice. The ones that are
has the episode of Jesse Ventura's show with you on it, is it aired yet?
No, actually it got pulled, I think it got, due to scheduling issues, I think it got postponed for 6 months. So you could probably look for it in, I think maybe even September, October. I'm not sure though. But the producers, have contacted me, and they said that, I am in 2 episodes. One for reptilians and one for time travel.
Okay.
But anyway, I feel like I need to get to the Gizeh Intelligence. This is really the nuts and bolts of the show tonight, and I think it's really important that we talk about that.
Yeah. I don't know if we're having a station break coming up, but let's get into that.
Okay, so flash forward, I'm still dealing with the fact that I'm a milab, and then possibly I hate the term super. Don't call me a super soldier, okay? I freaking hate that.
Okay.
So silly. It just makes me think of the Terminator movie or something. But, you know, I'm in these programs, whatever I am. James calls me a psi vessel, and I actually was used to house super soldiers' memories because they were going to get lobotomized because one of their mentors got assassinated. And they used, I know this sounds just like a Hollywood movie, but this is what I was told. Again, go with your own research on this, but what I was told is that they use looking glass technology, which is a type of divination tool or prognostication of possibilities and potentialities of potential outcomes of timelines. And the technology that was used said that I was the strongest, I was mentally and emotionally the strongest candidate to be used for this. And so he told me that he abducted me in the late 90s at some point when he knew that this mentor guy that was looking out for everyone was going to get taken out, most likely.
Hang on, so James Casbolt said he abducted you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do have a memory. I do. When he told me this, I got flooded with stuff. And I know that sounds like, oh, maybe he was just front-loading me. But no, that's typically what happens. When people recover memories, it only happens to me usually either when I'm by myself or when I am speaking to or in communication with someone who claims they are in the programs. And it's usually a pretty good indicator that this person is telling the truth if I get a recovered memory right after I receive information from them. And that it's like 90% of the time I get a memory like right after they tell me this, whatever it is, what they remember me in. So he told me that he abducted me when I was living in Brooklyn in the late 90s on a TR-3. There were a bunch of, what I remember was I'm in this gigantic, like, military plane is what it looked like a hangar in a, you know when they show film footage of, like, paratroopers who are about to jump out of the plane and they're all sitting on the hull of the ship, or the hull of the airplane on either of the sides?
Yes.
This thing was like one of those military planes, but 10 times bigger. It was huge, and it was black.
It's the TR-3B, the big triangle?
Yeah, this room that I was in with them, or whatever area of the plane, or craft, whatever you want to call it. And I'm sitting on the floor of this thing against the curved wall, and there's, like, I'm getting, like, I want to say just, like, 3 or 4 guys all around me, and they're all, like, jarheads. They all have camo on, and, you know, the olive t-shirts, and one guy, he has, like, the buzz cut, and he's got his arms crossed, and he's looking at me, like, very sternly, just like, what is this, what do we have to do, what's the process, like, look kind of perplexed, a little bit serious. And then James is like hypnotizing me. He's like looking into my eyes, and I remember thinking, who is this good-looking guy? Like the weirdest things you think when you're like abducted on a plane and, you know, whatever. But I just remember just strange things like that. And apparently they used this technology on me, and God knows what kind of technology it was, but I do have that memory when he said that. And apparently they temporarily housed these guys' memories because, and as it turns out, a large percentage of these guys were either institutionalized temporarily or lobotomized or both. And in fact, if you listen to Aaron McCullum's story, and I don't know if he was one of the guys whose memories were housed in me, but he did in fact have one of those weird kind of Jason Bourne type of experiences where he comes to an airport in a bus station in Portland, Oregon, and he's like, his head is shaved, and he's like I don't know, he doesn't know where he is, and he has like $11 to his name, and he's got a suitcase, and he doesn't know how he got there. I mean, that's typical of most of the stories of these people that I'm running into in the programs who would have been, I've met several of these people so far. Well, I've definitely met a couple of the guys whose memories were in my head, were placed there. And one of whom, who shall remain nameless, was institutionalized in Canada near the Q552 facility where supposedly James and myself were, and that's a whole other thing. I can't really get into that because I need to talk about the Gizeh Intelligence. But here he started drawing pictures of what he thought was an altar, who he called Anya, and she was tall and pale, and she was Jewish, and she lived in New York, and she had long dark hair, and her name was Anya. And she had a cat. He just described me to the T, and he thought this was an alter personality that he had, and he said I used to draw her on the walls of my cell.
And would this be a direct result of you having housed his memories and then putting them back?
Print that was class. As a
right.
result, a lot of these guys have this really strong pull towards me as well, and some of them are like, their reactions to me are weird. It's just really weird. Some of them, it's just, I don't have enough time to go into it now, but, you know, maybe in a future discussion we can talk about it. But, this was leading up to, and then, you know, keep in mind, I have sporadic contact with people supposedly in the secret space program telling me stuff, and they're telling me stuff, and they're telling me that more people, the Black Projects, are going to come forward. And they told me this like 3 years ago, and everything they told me pretty much has come true. Along with my guides, everything they told me has pretty much come true. And I'm just sort of like along for the ride. I show up. I basically show up. And this is kind of like a contract that I made with just like a amiable, you know, my life is a lot. And James helped me out a lot. He gets a lot of bad press. A lot of people think he's a charlatan agent. You know, all I can say to that is just walk a mile in his shoes. That's all I'm going to say about that right now. And anyone who wants to dispute that claim, fine. It's none of my business. I'm just describing what's happened to me and the things I've experienced in all. So, long story short, it was all of these experiences were culminating into this giant fireball that was, I don't know what was going to be done with it, but it was just this combustion chamber of a perfect storm of just like, what is going to happen next? And it's just escalated and escalated and escalated. And over the last several years, I started getting marks on my body that I was really hesitant to talk to people about. It was really scary. They were just these strange, like first it was like faces. I would start seeing faces appear on my skin. And I thought I was going crazy until I went over to my friend's house for dinner one night and I saw one appear, and I had an open enough friendship with her that she was okay with the channeling and the psychic medium thing and the being abducted by people. And she witnessed it. She saw something appear on my skin. And that was the first time I remember thinking, oh my God, I wish it would be so much easier if I didn't see this appearing on my skin. If I was just hallucinating, I could take a pill. I could make it go away. So it turns out this has escalated to the point where I just published, finally, I couldn't take it anymore because it was getting so ridiculous. It's escalated to the point where they look like crypt tattoos. They look like gang member tattoos almost. They get that intricate and detailed. And it's kind of scary. It's like, what is going on here? Well, I received intel recently when I posted on my blog, anyaischannel.blogspot.com, the images. You can see them on I believe it's the April 24th post. Photographs are right there. They're unretouched, and then I have underneath the unretouched photos adjusted for contrast. That's all I've done to them. They were taken straight off of my iPhone. No Photoshop was used in the making of these photos. I swear to God. So it's culminated with several Black Ops people talking about their stories. James's story is totally corroborating with mine lately. It's coalescing with the telepathy, the information I'm getting. I'm suddenly recalling information about being off-world in battles that have been taking place for the last 6 months on the moon. I started sending basically, I guess you could say, coded messages about these battles that are very real. They're like real. They're 3D real as you and I, real. And sometimes they go into 5D consciousness matrix grid, whatever you want to call it, but that's a whole, I can't explain that in the time that we have left. But maybe another time. And there's an etheric war. As I said, this goes back into file under we are multi-dimensional beings. It also goes into my ability to create portals. I can actually create bridges between worlds. And it's funny because my last name in Welsh means bridge, which I think is very funny because I am a portal maker. It's not to, part of my MyLab stuff involves black occult rituals. And the point behind black occult rituals is to open interdimensional doorways. Do I do that in conscious waking life? No, I am not a black magician in conscious waking life. But unfortunately, in my programming, there are black witch altars. And unfortunately, a lot of these people in the programs, their altars are being activated, or they are already working for the Gizeh Intelligence or the Reptilian overlords or whatever you want to call it. And they, in turn, are the slaves to their masters, and they're psychically attacking me and talking trash about me and going on their blogs and saying I'm psychically attacking them and, I'm abusive and all this nonsense. And really, that's their programming. And it's, in a weird sort of way, you have to be happy because that shows there's a tipping point that's been reached, and that means I'm hitting a nerve. Because really, I'm all about the love. I really am. I'm not out to get anybody. I'm just, I don't like being attacked, and I will let the person know that I don't like being attacked, and I will call them on their crap if they start, saying nonsense about me. But it's an indicator of the escalation of what's going on behind the scenes. I would advise you to research the Secret Space Program. I would advise you to listen to any lectures that Peter Lavenda, Richard Dolan, anyone who's talked about the subject at any length who in the alternative community who would be able to give more information, I would recommend. There's tons of information on the net about it. You might want to check out, I know this sounds like a crazy blog. It is. It's pretty laugh out loud funny, but I've been in touch with the guy who's at the blog for Confessions of a Former White Hat Operative. And I know he's probably going to listen to the archives, so hi, former. He's really funny. He makes me laugh out loud. But he actually has a lot of coded intel that is incredibly accurate. But it's like so far out there for most civilians, quote unquote, that they can't wrap their minds around it, and they think so much of it is really outrageous when in fact a lot of it is not. It's quite real, some of it. Some of it is deliberate disinfo, but again, it's like the word holograph. People have such a strong emotional reaction to the term, and they don't understand. It's like the knife analogy. Knife can cut your food or it can kill you. Some disinformation is meant as a red herring to make sure that people don't die. It's meant to distract so that people stay alive. It's not necessarily just to be a sociopath. I would implore people take that into consideration and look at a more nuanced tone when somebody starts spouting off really provocative stuff that challenges your notions of reality. Okay? Some of these guys know exactly what they're doing, and they're not all bad people. Some of them are actually trying to protect you by doing what they're doing, believe it or not. So that's another silver lining thing that I wish to mention. Now, the Gizeh Intelligence. I'm going to try and sum this up in a nutshell right now. The reason I'm marks on my body, as many people have mentioned, and I love Alex Collier, but I think maybe his intel might have been confused a bit, or maybe it was correct, but it's no longer correct. Same thing with Billy Meyer, same thing with a lot of contactees. It is my understanding that the Gizeh Intelligence were a group of human ETs, and they were Pleiadian as well as Mantis, as well as, I think, Reptilian as well. It's a collective of people. It's basically a cult, okay? It's a cult. But there are bad Pleiadians as well. There are Pleiadians gone bad. They just were. And they were part of the original Gizeh Intelligence, however many, I don't know, thousands of years ago. I have no idea. And the reason they're called that is because they had basically at the time an ancient version of a deep underground military facility underneath the Giza Plateau, which is where I believe the pyramids of Giza are in the Sphinx, specifically located underneath the Sphinx in Egypt. And it was a secret school. It largely revolved around basically what the modern term would be as satanic ritual abuse in order to, surprise, surprise, communicate with interdimensional doorways, open interdimensional doorways through ritual and so forth and sacrifice, and to communicate with interdimensional beings who could give tactical and strategic information. And the military still uses this today. Stop kidding yourself and thinking that some of these occult rituals don't happen at the tippy top of the military-industrial complex. A lot of these guys are avowed Satanists, and they have no problem whatsoever. And they even trap souls. There's the soul trapping device that John Lear is talking about. It's so much more complicated and complex and diverse than I can go into right now. But a lot of it has to do with soul trapping technology as well and gathering power. Again, I'm not saying this to fearmonger. I'm saying you have an opportunity as an individual to command your own personal responsibility and to empower yourself further by making a decision about what you want, how you want to approach it. And, throwing your hands up and saying, what can I do? I'm just one person. You're not getting it if that's your natural response. Collectively, there's a lot of power in the concept that thoughts create reality, and I'd just like you guys to think about that, whoever's listening. And I thank you for listening if you've gotten this far. Now, moving forward. The Gizeh Intelligence supposedly was taken off world in some giant battle, I don't know, recently, in the 20th century at some point. I do not necessarily believe that's the case because I was told through intel the other day that the marks on my body are indeed punishment. It's technology, a nanotechnology that's being used to create occult imagery that in turn will trigger others who see it. And that's why another reason I did not publish these images until now. It wasn't time. And I realized that these images might be very triggering to people who are milabs or members, people who are in the secret programs. And I apologize for that, but there is a purpose for revealing these images at this time. I had to. I couldn't take it anymore, first of all. And secondly, because I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't hide it anymore. It was becoming too obvious. And it was just getting worse. But secondly, it is to prove a point that, in fact, what's happening to me is real. And what's happening to other people who are making claims, they're not just making claims, to be attention seekers. It's actually real. So hopefully this will galvanize the public to do something about it, because I'm just one person. I can't do it alone. But collectively, we can affect change. We can battle this group because they are also responsible for the collective mind control of the world, of the planet. They've set these systems in place. And it's our job to dismantle this. And we can and we will do this. I guarantee humanity will survive. This is also part of the contract. But the things in my arms, primarily show up in my arms, but sometimes in my legs, it's been explained to me that it's a blood-borne nanobot type thing. I mean, it's literally mini robots the size of blood cells that attach.
Nanites?
Nanites, yeah. And, they're trying to punish me for talking about stuff. And I definitely got a psychic attack the minute I posted this. It went on for hours. It was like this really horrible pain in my back and in my chest. But you know what? Those are the lumps that I take. I chose to do this because I would rather die free than to be under the yoke of slavery one more day. And if you are any person worth your salt, you will say the same thing. It's just a no-brainer. It's like, do you want to be a slave or do you want to be free? It's basically breaks down to that. And a lot of this is, a lot of the freedom comes from getting over fear of pain, fear of death, fear of losing the status quo, fear of losing what you have. It's all an illusion. And the faster you realize this, the faster you'll get over pain and fear. And that's the whole point. They don't want us. The whole point of Gizeh Intelligence was to keep us low so they could suck that energy into their energy bodies and sort of expand on the whatever monopoly that they have. This is the same group that also communicated with the Nazis, which is why these memories of these battles on the moon and so forth are happening right now. Because there's Nazi bases on the moon. There's Nazi bases all over the place, as far as I understand it. Well, if they aren't on Mars, there's a bunch of Nazi sympathizers there. You know, the Nazi Bell technology from World War II, you know, some of it given was pretty darn accurate, and some of it was fake. Oh, and what I'm being told is there were 2 sets of blueprints that were distributed. One was fake and one was real, and the Nazi Bell was real. The Nazi Bell technology is real. And there was a Pleiadian medium by the name of Maria Orsich, who was the leader of a group called the Vril Society, who confided with Nazi generals and so forth. And there was a program that I can't remember the name of the one person in charge who was in charge of this, but they wanted to use the Nazi Bell to go off world and escape the planet. And in fact, when it was clear that the Germans were quote unquote losing the war, they took off, never to be seen again. And Maria was instrumental in being a facilitator of communication and information with off-world entities that assisted in the building of the Bell technology as well as other Nazi UFO-related anti-gravitic technology. I am sort of the opposite end of the spectrum, but doing the same thing Maria Orsich is doing, except I work for the good guys. She didn't. And she recently got killed, by the way. And thank God for that, because she was a traitor to humanity.
Recently, as in like
saying that at all. What?
How recently was she killed?
Very recently. That was like 2 months ago. A lot of people are saying she's cloned and there's clones of her walking around, but she was the progenitor of a lot of negativity, unwittingly. She was kind of naive, but she knew exactly what she was doing. She was also kind of a missionary about it. So, you know what? That which you reap, so you shall sow. That's all I have to say about that. I mean, these people are megalomaniacs, and they really believe that they're the super gods. They're responsible for the eugenics programming, putting this technology inside of me just to see what'll happen. I mean, I'm a human guinea pig, and I'm sick of it. I didn't speak before the Presidential Committee for the Study on Bioethics just because I felt like it, just because I wasn't doing anything better that day. You know, I'm devoted to my own well-being, and you should be too. Anybody who's listening to this, do you want to be under the yoke of this nonsense, these fanatics, one more minute? Or do you actually want to embrace your own empowerment? And that's the whole point of my awakening as well, is to just like remind people that they are empowered and they just choose to not be if they feel disempowered. So, at any rate, I am also in a military unit. I serve as a form of a kind of intergalactic coxswain for a rowing crew. And I open pools, and I give them orders about what the technology is. I give them heads up about where they can go and where they can't go. And I tell them, go there, go here. I'm not the general of it, but I'm like the seer. I'm the visionary. I'm the clairvoyant. And I help them in operatives. And James Casbolt is my commander. I know this sounds crazy. This sounds totally insane. It's not even necessarily happening on the physical realm, but I can assure you it is an etheric 3D, 5D, 10D, I have no idea, thing that's going on. I periodically update. I see battles. I I feel really bad lately because there was a tactical maneuver that happened and somebody died because I wasn't quick enough. And part of that is because it's all in the timing. A lot of it has to do with timing. And I don't even know if this person was a physical 3D reality person. But I'm walking around for the last several weeks. I know I'm not trying to be flippant here, I'm serious, but things like that happen, and you take it to heart. You feel like, oh my God, could I have done that better? Could I have done this better? What did I do wrong? And I don't know. Again, this could be a computer program. I have no idea. But at the same time, the effect is it's the same. And it's getting more real. I know this sounds like I'm losing reality, but the fact of the matter is we don't.
Well, sounds like we're at the end of the show. Obviously, we're going to need to bring you back, Anya, because there's much more information. Well, here we are at the end of the Art of Reality. Next week, Tammy Sutton will be back with me, and we're going to be talking, interestingly enough, about Nazis and the sort of trend of reprocessed Nazis we're seeing in films and literature lately. So for that, I thank Anya for being my guest today, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.